education. Today's title of our event is Supporting Students Experiencing Homelessness by Ms. Linda Garibay, and she will be discussing data on youth homelessness, impact on education, and how people can help. Ms. Linda Lee Garibay is a project specialist that works for the Homeless Education Services Department at the San Diego County Office of Education. The Homeless Education Services Department provides technical assistance and professional development to local educational agencies, or LEAs, as their acronym is, in San Diego to all 42 San Diego school districts and other partners to ensure educational access and success for children experiencing homelessness. Linda has received her master's in youth development and has been working with young people for 11 years. Linda's main focus is on community and shelter outreach and runs the Project REST, an emergency hotel stay program for students experiencing homelessness and their families. So I will now switch it to today's speaker. Thank you so much, Ms. Garibay, for being here with us.
Thank you, Angelica. And thank you all for having me here, and thank you all for joining me today. I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk about an important topic. Oh, let's see. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. I appreciate having the opportunity to talk about an important topic to me and also to San Diego, as a lot of children in San Diego are experiencing homelessness. And so if you hear me referring to the students as students or children experiencing homelessness, is because I don't like to say homeless children, just because a lot of people don't like to identify as being homeless because they're just going through a rough period in their time. Okay, and I want to encourage anyone at any point, I know we're going to have opportunities for questions at the end, but if anybody has any questions, you can feel free to stop me at any moment and ask me. So, yeah. Oh, maybe I need to redo that again. Here we go.
Remember our online audience.
Yes, that's right.
Do you have any audio?
No audio. So this is perfect. Okay. So everyone can see the screen. I'm on my introduction slide. So my name is Linda. I am a project specialist, a manager that works with the County Office of Education. If you guys have never heard about the County Office of Education before, it is the organization that oversees all of the schools and school districts, all 42 school districts in San Diego, and all of the charter schools. And so if you know of any children, if you have children of your own who go to school, I help support them. So we oversee all the schools from down south in Chula Vista to up east in El Cajon, all the way to Oceanside, and then even in Julian and Alpine area. And then one of my roles at the County Office of Ed is that I work with the Homeless Education Services Department to make sure that every children that is in San Diego that's experiencing homelessness is enrolled in school, and they have supports and services available to them so that they can be successful in school. I also do shelter and community outreach. So I visit all of the shelters in San Diego on a monthly basis, and I make sure that all of the students at that shelter are enrolled in school. And you'd be surprised as to how often you find people are not enrolled in school because they don't think they think that just because they're homeless, they don't have the right to go to school, which is not the case. And so we want to make sure that all students that are attending a shelter are enrolled and they're receiving free transportation to school. Actually, this last week when I went to go visit one of the shelters in downtown Father Joe's, I had a family that had a child who hadn't been to school in 4 years. And so you can only imagine like how that impacts them academically for them to think that they cannot go to school. So part of my role is educating staff and educating parents on why it's important for their child to go to school. Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about data in San Diego in terms of children homelessness, because I know that before I started my role, I did not know the amount of students that were experiencing homelessness in San Diego. We're going to talk about how being homeless impacts a student or a child to be able to, go through their life and into their adulthood. We're going to talk about a federal law that was instated to help kids in school to help support them. And we're going to talk about how you all can support in your community as well. Okay, so in the school year of 2021 to 2022, there were about 1.3 million children nationwide in the United States that were experiencing homelessness. Only 2.5% of these children actually go to school. So we have a huge percentage of students that do not. In California alone, that was 200,000 children that were experiencing homelessness. And in San Diego, that was about 16,000. And this was 2021 to 2022. Last year, we just got the data for 2022 to 2023, and it's increased to 21,000 students. So I'm sure you all know that San Diego is experiencing a housing crisis. Rents have risen, and that has contributed to the fact that families cannot afford to send to pay for rent. And so we even have people who work in the education system who can't afford a place to live. And it's really hard, especially if you are a single mother or a single father, a single parent, to be able to rent a place or to afford a place on a one income. So that's what contributes to so many people experiencing homelessness. And I'm just going to check the chat really quick because I want to make sure everybody. Okay, we're good. Okay. So it's an estimated that 4 million youth. So when we're talking about these numbers, right, it's not just people experiencing homelessness in San Diego County. That's 20,000 kids under the age of 24 that are experiencing homelessness. And we include the age 24 because in San Diego, there are schools that support students up until the age of 24. So we still regard them as children or young people. And so there's an estimated 4 million young people that are from the ages of 14 to 24 alone that are experiencing homelessness. 78% of those children are living in very crowded situations with other people because they can't afford to live on their own. 11% of these children stay at homeless shelters around San Diego. 7% of these families stay in hotels or motels because they can't always afford to stay in a consistent place where they have to pay a monthly rent. So maybe their parents get a paycheck. They can afford to stay in a hotel for a week and then they're back on the streets. And then 4% stay in unsheltered situations. They're living in parking lots. They're living on the streets in tents, such. Okay. So the reason why it's really important for us to identify kids in shelters and to make sure that we know which kids are homeless is because being homeless can impact your ability to go to school, right? Even if you get enrolled in school, you have poor health issues. You might have, you're suffering from extreme hunger because your parents can't afford to put food on the table. I had a family just last week that I was helping, a mom who just moved here from Georgia, has 4 kids. She was escaping a really bad living situation. And she didn't have any money, so she was feeding her 4 kids applesauce and taco sauce packets. And so you can imagine like the access to getting fresh food is really hard, especially if they don't have an access to a microwave, they don't have an access to a fridge or running water, they can't heat up food, they can't cook. So even if they can't buy fresh food, they're relying on fast food, which isn't something that, is sustainable in the long term. They also might have mental health issues because they're going through some sort of trauma as to, being unhoused. I mean, it's hard to focus in school if you don't know where you're gonna live that night or where you're gonna stay, right? And a lot of the times too, we have children who get kicked out of their homes, so they're living on their own and they don't know where to go. They don't have family to go to, and that can be very stressful. They also lack access to basic needs. Aside from food, they might not have laundry facilities to wash their clothes. They don't have money, so they can't buy new clothes. They can't buy the things that they need on a daily basis, or they don't have access to a bathroom, as simple as a bathroom. So they are constantly, coming to school like without being showered or feeling really uncomfortable with themselves. Children who are experiencing homelessness might also have concerns or worries that they're going to be reported to child welfare services or police. There is no law that says that it's illegal to be homeless, but a lot of children and a lot of parents get scared that, when the school finds out, they're going to get their kids taken away from them because they're not being a good parent because they can't provide a place to stay. That's not the case. And so one of the reasons why it's really important for us to go to shelters and for us to go out on the streets to find these kids is to let their parents know, like, it's okay to send your kids to school. There's not going to be repercussions. We're not going to, report anyone to, the police or to ICE or to law enforcement. I think the only time that we would make a report is if the parents were endangering the kids in some way. They were being abusive or they were not allowing them to, they were putting them in dangerous situations where they were letting them go with dangerous people or something. If they're not being careful, they're not watching their kids. But we know that a lot of parents, they can't help the situation of being homeless because it's just a matter of not having enough money to live in a place. Students who are experiencing homelessness can also have really unstable school situations. They might be moving around a lot. So the students might not be attending school on a regular basis. And it's really hard, as a parent, when you're thinking like, do I go to access the service in downtown where their office hours is only 8 to 5, or so that I can get a place to live, or do I take my kids to school? And so a lot of the times when you're so worried about where your kids are going to stay, taking them to school might not be the first priority on their mind. So they have really irregular attendance. And then the last thing, which is one of the most important things, is transportation. If you don't have a place to live, you might not even have a car, or maybe you sold your car so that you can get money so that you can have a place to live. And so a lot of the times, parents can't get their kids to school. They lack the transportation necessary to get their kids to school. Yes.
When you're talking about kids, are you talking about within the city or people that are coming from the border also that are included in this?
It depends. We're talking about kids in the city, but we also, in certain circumstances, we have kids who come out of other countries. They're either seeking asylum or they're just trying to find a better place to live, that might have to cross every single day because it's cheaper to live in Tijuana than it is to live here. And so I do have students who have to cross the border every single day. And that's not because they'd rather live over there, but it's because it's cheaper to live over there and they still want to go to school here. So I have a lot of kids who originally they go to school here, but they can't afford to live here anymore, right? And so they might live close to the border and then they make the 2-hour long commute to come every day just to go to school. Are there any other questions or any other questions on Zoom? Okay. All right. So a big barrier that impacts student education and children education is with every change in school, a student is the research states that a student loses about 4 to 6 months of academic progress. And so the reason why a student might change schools often is when you're looking for a place to stay, you're not going to be picky. You're not going to be like, well, I lived in Oceanside, so I'm going to try to find a place in Oceanside. What is tricky about San Diego is that a lot of shelters, a lot of services happen to be in downtown San Diego. That's why you see such a big homeless population in downtown. And so when someone becomes homeless, maybe whether it be El Cajon, it be Vista, be Chula Vista, they're gonna move to the shelters in areas that they're gonna find a place to live. So family might, live in Oceanside, but then they need to find shelter. They have to move to downtown San Diego. So they're gonna have their kids switch schools. And so it impacts the kids because every time kids move schools, they lose about 4 to 6 months of progress, which is really important, and it impacts their ability to continue forward with their education. Additionally, if you're a family that loses your housing, you might say like, okay, well, I'll move in with my sister, I'll move in with my parents if you're lucky enough to have family nearby. And so you have to move wherever they are located. So students that are experiencing homelessness are more likely to be chronically absent from school. They're more likely to get lower grades, more likely to have special education needs, score poorly on tests, and they are more likely to drop out of school as well.
So you said that earlier, the 78% that's doubled up. That do you mean like kind of doubled up, like crashing with a relative?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So when we refer to double up, that means people who are living with a sibling and or like a family member or a friend. But the reason why that we consider that still to be homeless is, one, it's not a stable living situation. They could be asked to leave at any moment. They might not have a good relationship with their family member, so it's only temporary and it might only be 5 days, And so when you're in a situation where you're told, hey, you need to leave today, where are you going to go if you don't have anywhere else to go, right? And so when we, as maybe if you're a homeowner or you rent, you're on a lease, right? So if your manager says like, hey, you need to leave, they need to give you at least 30 to 60 day notice to let you know, so you have time to plan your next step or find another place. But if you're living with family members, they might ask you to leave that day and you have to leave that day, right? So the reason why knowing this information is important is because being homeless creates significant educational barriers for kids. And so we know that a lack of high school diploma or GED is the top reason as to why we have such a big homeless population. Right now, it's really critical to have at least a high school diploma to be able to get a job, and the job market is competitive in being able to get something. And so what we want to do is we want to break that cycle, right? We don't want our kids to grow up not to have an education and then become homeless as adults, and then to have kids who don't go to school and then become homeless as adults. So we really want to make sure that they can at least get through high school or get their GED, so that they have a more likely ability to get a job. Students that are experiencing homelessness are 87% more likely to drop out. And so if they're moving from place to place, their focus might not be on school, their focus might be on helping their parents make money somehow, and then they end up leaving school. So it's really important for us to figure out who these kids are, so that they know that they're at school, there's actually services in place to help them be successful. And that's the problem, is that a lot of people who are homeless, they don't report that they're homeless in those situations because, like I said, they're scared, right? Or they don't think that they have access to specific rights, and we want them to know that they have services in place, people to help them. And so that's where a federal law came into place called McKinney-Vento Assistance Act. This is an actual federal law that provides educational rights and protections for children and young people that are experiencing homelessness. So there's federal laws in place, and it says that every school district, every charter, every school entity is supposed to appoint one person, a teacher, a counselor, a social worker, that their sole job is to identify the kids that are experiencing homelessness and support them in any other way. And there's funds in place that are federal funds. Ooh. Oh no. That blue battery. I want to make sure that we get this connected before. Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Is it good? It doesn't fit. Oh, on the back side? Perfect. Well, let me just make sure. All right, we're good. Perfect. All right, thank you so much for your help. Okay. So this federal law was put in place to say that every school, every charter, there's someone that's supposed to help these kids make sure that they get services that they need. And it's more than just school stuff, right? So if we said earlier, like if you're going to school and you're homeless, going to school might not be a priority. So these liaisons also help in different ways that we're going to talk about. And this McKinney-Vento Assistance Act applies to any child. The homeless definition under McKinney-Vento is any child who's lacking a nighttime residence that is fixed, regular, or adequate. So fixed means something that is stationary, not subject to change. So that might be a place that you could stay with on a lease. It's also regular, meaning that it's standard and consistent. That child can go back to it every single night without having to worry that they're going to get kicked out. Okay, and that might, when you're talking about hotels and motels, that might not apply because you don't have enough funds, or the hotel staff can kick you out at any time. And adequate, we want to make sure that that place that they're staying at has basic needs. They have running water, they have electricity, because how is a kid supposed to eat without running water? Or how are they supposed to do their homework without adequate electricity? And so it's not just about finding any place for them to stay, but finding a place that can meet their basic needs as a human being. And then the last one is, it also applies to what we call an unaccompanied youth. And these are children who might not have a parent or guardian, or who have been kicked out, abandoned, or they ran away. And so I know a lot of the times I talk to people who are very surprised that children get kicked out often. They might end up having gotten pregnant and their parents don't agree with the situation, so they might kick them out. They might be an LGBTQ youth and the parents don't agree, so they might kick them out. And so the child is in a position where they don't have anywhere to go, and it's not safe for them to be at home either. Yes.
Homeschooling, I'm just curious, like, where does that play a role from?
So homeschooling is a viable option if that was something that they want to do, but you have to go through a process for homeschooling. You have to get vetted, you have to sign a lot of paperwork, and you also are tied to some sort of public education entity to be able to know that you're providing the adequate academic work. And also a lot of the times homeschooling requires an address. And so that's where a lot of homeless families wouldn't be able to homeschool because there's no address for them to put on file.
So you're talking about addresses, like you said, there's kids that come in from Tijuana and they go to a school here. Back then, it used to be you had to have the address within that district. So is that changed now?
So if you're a homeless student, that doesn't apply. And so if you're not a homeless student, yes, you would have to provide an address for that kid to go to a school in that area. But if you're experiencing homelessness, then you can provide the school address. Yeah. And we will talk a little bit more about that. So that is a good question. Okay. So the role of the liaisons, as I said, the McKinney-Vento federal law appoints someone at the school to help the kids be successful. What the homeless liaison does is they need to make sure that homeless children in the area are identified and they are enrolled in school and they have equal opportunities to succeed. And so they need to be able to provide different services. Their goal is not just to help the kid in school. They need to be aware of what services in the area can help the kids, either with housing, health, mental health services, food services. They need to be aware and knowledgeable about that because, as we said, there are a lot of barriers, right, for a kid to be successful in school. So if you don't help them outside of school with getting housing, with getting food, their focus isn't going to be on school. So these school appointed people are still supposed to be able to help them in other ways outside of just the school. So I have a lot of people who work in the school system that day in and day out, they take their parents or they take the children to their doctor's appointments. They make sure that they're getting food bank information and they're going to the food banks and they're accessing these resources, they're accessing these foods. They're making referrals for them to get in touch with a social worker so that they can start case management, or they're helping them sign up for different services. And so it is a very taxing job. And we say there's one person at every school to help, but sometimes that's not even enough because depending on where you're located, your school might have a lot of homeless children. So maybe in North County, Oceanside, Carlsbad, they report low numbers of homeless children. They might have less than 100, right? But when we're looking at San Diego Unified, which is the downtown location, Central San Diego, you have children that have numbers up to 2,000, and it's one person helping 2,000 kids, and that's a lot to do on a daily basis. And these people might have other jobs that they're tasked with, so it's really hard. Even when we say we have support, sometimes it's not enough. I'm gonna check the chat because I see. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the McKinney-Vento law and some of the things that they help with in terms of making sure that the kid is able to go and participate in school. So the first one is school origin. So these are all things that normally wouldn't apply to regular students, but they only apply to homeless students. And the reason why I want to share this with you is because you might come across a family, a parent who has a child who is homeless. And you might even know someone who's homeless, but they haven't shared with you that they're homeless. There's 20,000 people children alone in San Diego that are experiencing homelessness. And I know for sure that there were a lot of people that I didn't know that were homeless that end up being homeless. And it's, I think, important for all of us as a community to know what these laws and services are so that if that ever happens, we can help people in our community to be able to find and access those resources that we need. I used to not do this talk as much, this presentation, but then I started going to random schools and doing the presentation, and I was having children come up to me afterwards that were saying, I know someone who's in this situation. Can I have your email? Can I have your contact number so I can give it to them? People that children that I didn't know were homeless and ended up telling me that they were homeless. And so it's just important for all of us to know this information to be able to help when we can. So one of the things that applies to homeless children that doesn't apply to other children is that they're allowed to attend the school that they were last permanently housed in. So our example earlier was maybe they're attending a school in Oceanside, but because they become unhoused or become homeless, they have to move to downtown. They're still allowed to go to that school in Oceanside. If you're not homeless and you just move, you have to move to the school wherever you're located. But the reason why in the law we have this is because we want to keep the kids in school where they're comfortable. We don't want to move them because they're going to lose academic process if we move them.
But say if they're going to Oceanside to school, but they live in downtown in a shelter, and you said there's transportation provided, how is this transportation provided? Like, are they taking like is there someone like physically driving them, or like are they taking like the train?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's going to be on the next slide, so I'm going to answer that question, but that is a really good question. So part of the law states that the school has to allow the kid to go where they were last good. They can choose to go to the new school in their area, but a lot of the times the kids don't want to move schools. They want to stay with their friends, right? They want to stay with the teachers that they know that they're comfortable with. And in California is really great actually, because in California we have a law that allows them to go to any school that they attended in the last 15 years, in the last 1.5 years that they feel comfortable with. So that's something specifically we have in California. And then if you see on the slide, it says LEA, that just means school. It's just a short-term name for school or charter. And so the school has to keep the children, if they want to, in the school that they're last attending until the end of the school year. So let's say a child is experiencing homelessness, they find a house in March. Great. The school still has to let them stay at that school until the end of the school year, which is usually in June or July. Okay. And we want to always try to convince the parents to let the child stay in their last school, because we think that that's always what's best for the kids. Because when you move schools, some schools don't operate with the same classes, so they might lose credit. And that's important because when it comes to senior year, when they're graduating, you want to get as many credits as you possibly can so that you can actually graduate. Okay, so transportation. So we say that like schools have to allow their kids to go to their last school, even if it's miles and miles away. But then we also have to be able to provide transportation to be able to get the kids to the school. And a lot of the times parents don't have the car, they don't have money for gas. So if we tell them, yeah, you can, keep your child in Oceanside, that doesn't mean that they're going to have the means to be able to keep their child in Oceanside. And a good example of that is last week I went to a shelter at the San Diego Rescue Mission in downtown. Mom really, really, really wanted to keep her child in school because her child was happy there. So she makes the 1.5 hour drive from downtown to Oceanside every morning and then every afternoon to be able to do so. But she's starting to run out of gas money, right? Gas is expensive these days. And so she doesn't know what to do. She's really stressed out. And she didn't realize that the school can help pay for transportation, which could be saving her hundreds of dollars every week, right? And so schools are required by law to provide transportation to these children. And they can do that either by setting up a school bus that will go from Oceanside to downtown to transport the student, bus passes for public transportation. They can also provide mileage reimbursement or gas cards. So if a parent does want to transfer their kid from San Diego downtown to Oceanside and use their own car, they can get money back from mileage reimbursement or by getting provided a gas card. And then districts are required to work together. So if you're in downtown, you're probably in San Diego Unified. That's one school district. And then if your kid goes to Oceanside, that's Oceanside School District. So it's two districts that are required by law to work together to get this kid to and from school. And so a lot of parents don't know that. And then they're like, well, I'm not going to get my kid to school. And then you tell them like, hey, this is free transportation for you to be able to do so. And a lot of the time they provide that transportation to the parent as well. And so it's basically free money to be able to get the family to and around San Diego.
Just to let you know, we have about 5 more minutes. And
Okay.
10 minutes of Q&A.
Perfect. Let me just check the chat. Okay. The last question asked about transportation and traveling long distances for shelter in school.
They can't hear
Oh,
what the
perfect.
questions are said.
Oh, okay. Okay. So another thing is immediate enrollment. Children are allowed to be enrolled in school right away. And so regular children who might not be homeless, they have to make sure they provide immunization records. For children that are experiencing homelessness, because we want to get them right away, the parents are given 30 days to provide immunization records to the school. But because we don't want them to wait any longer, we want to make sure we get them in. The liaison at that school that's designated to help that student, it helps them with setting up appointments, taking them to the appointments to get the immunization records. So the parent, that's one less thing the parent has to worry about is what do all the paperwork do I need? Maybe you're seeking asylum from another country. I had a family who walked for 3 months to get here to the United States, and there was a big storm in the jungle that they were coming through, and they ended up having to drop all of the papers that they had on them, and so the school actually has to work with the embassy to get the paperwork necessary for the kids to be able to go to school.
Sorry, then that Q&A is at 8:20.
Oh, okay. I was like, okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay. And then one of the things that is guaranteed for children not experiencing homelessness is, unfortunately, some schools, because it's very expensive to be able to provide these services for families, some schools are very open about providing services. They want to be able to provide services. Some schools, they might push back a little bit. They might say like, hey, you're actually not supposed to be in this school, or you're not supposed to be in this area. That's where we come into place, and we want to make sure that we provide the law, and we look at the case and we say, hey, actually you are supposed to provide services. And so schools are not allowed to kick students out who are experiencing homelessness unless they go through a very intensive process of being able to provide parents with paperwork that's written and then approved by us. So when a family, if you ever have a family that's experiencing homelessness and they're having trouble getting their kids to school, or the school is pushing back, that's when you can contact me, and we can make sure that the child has their right to stay in school without people giving them a hard time. Okay. So really want to quickly talk about graduation. So students that are experiencing homelessness have a 57.6 graduation rate in comparison to housed children that have an 82.5% graduation rate. So that is a very steep difference. It's 30%. And then they're 48% more likely to go to, or they're the 48% college going rate versus housed children who have a 65% chance of going to college. And so one of the things that the schools need to do is, one, help all the kids who are at school apply for FAFSA. I don't know if has anyone heard of FAFSA before. It is the financial aid to be able to help a child to go to college. And so a child might be overwhelmed if they don't have parents to help them, if they don't have family to help them, they might not understand how to apply for that. And so the school is required to help them do that. And also the school has to look at all of their coursework before graduation to try to find places where they can award credit so that the kid can graduate from school and get their high school diploma or their GED. Okay. So those are all the things that the school is able to provide, right? And that you now as people in the community understand and can help kids, you know, in the future. If you ever come across, let them know that those are the educational rights that they have to themselves. But there are also a lot of things that you can do in order to help aside from in being in school. So one was understanding the homeless education rights, but also, you can volunteer at shelters. There's a lot of shelters in San Diego, especially in downtown. There's Father Joe's Villages, and there's also the San Diego Rescue Mission. And when I visit these shelters, a lot of the things that the families need is, and even the schools need in general, is clothing. You know, kids who are experiencing homelessness, their parents might not be able to have the money to provide clothing for school. And even though that might not be, you know, new clothing might not be something that is on a family's mind when they don't have money, when you're a child going to school, that might be something that you feel really uncomfortable with. You're wearing the same clothes every day. You don't have access to laundry services, so they're dirty often before you can get them washed. And so that might be one of the reasons why children doesn't feel comfortable going to school, is because they get scared they're going to get picked on. And then especially during the winter, coats, things like socks, they're needed because we're talking about kids in shelters, but we actually have a lot of kids living on the streets in tents. And so I'm sure you guys know, like in times where we have a storm or we have very cold weather, it's really hard for kids to keep themselves warm outside. And so bedding is also something that's really important. Blankets, sheets. Was there a question?
So is there, like, where do we donate the clothing and stuff to? I mean, I know Father Joe, San Diego Rescue Mission. Where would it, like, for the kids living in tents and stuff?
So if you have, if you are wanting to donate clothes, I can provide you with my contact information, and I can provide you with an extensive list of places that you can split those donations among. You can also share them with me, and I do shelter and street outreach often. So I actually go to the streets in downtown and I visit with kids from tent to tent, and I make sure that they have anything that they need. And that's why I almost recommend sometimes not to donate to shelters. That's a great option. But the problem is that a lot of people are donating to shelters all the time, right? So the shelters end up getting a lot of stuff. What I do is I create hygiene kits at home with things like toothpaste, toothbrush, shaving necessities, shampoo, and soap, and socks. I put that in my car in different bags. And now every time I drive, I see a homeless family, I see a homeless person, I grab that. It's better than giving them money. Sometimes it's better than giving them even food, because they might get food often, but they don't get hygiene supplies often. And I'll give them an entire kit, and it really makes a difference to be able to have that on them. So you can do it on your own, or you can contact me. I have my business cards here, so I'll give you my business cards, and you can donate it over to our organization, and we can make sure we disperse them, because we visit everywhere around the county, every single. Okay. I wanted to bring a hygiene kit, and it slipped my mind to show you guys, but hygiene supplies are a really important thing that people don't think about all the time. But you want to be able to brush your teeth, you want to be able to wash your body, and even when you're staying at a shelter, they have laundry facilities, but you have to pay for laundry detergent. And so laundry detergent is also something that people need, because they have to spend money on that. And then another thing is school supplies. Kids need to have a backpack. They need to have things like pens and pencils and binders, paper to be able to go to school. And so at school, they can help with that. But for instance, we do you're probably going to see this a lot at the beginning of the school year when you go to like the grocery store, people are asking for like donations, right? For homeless students. It's we do a drive called Stuff the Bus at the beginning of the school year every year where we ask for donations. We buy school supplies with those donations and then we spread them out evenly all across San Diego. That is only one time a year at the beginning of the school year. Kids become homeless throughout the school year, not just at the beginning of the school year. And a lot of the times, if you're moving and you're living on the streets, your backpack might get torn up halfway through the school year and you need a new backpack. When I was housed, I needed a new backpack sometimes when I was halfway through the school year too. And then the parents don't have the money to be able to afford it. And so school supplies are a really great thing to donate. And then toys. I know it seems like it's not the first thing on someone's mind if they're homeless in regards to like, food and clothes, but kids are kids. They need to be able to have fun and they get really, really excited when they get a toy because it's something that they can call their own. It's something that they can, keep on them and they get really excited, especially during times when it's their birthday or during times where it's the holiday season and everyone else is getting new toys and they don't have anything. And so toys is also something that's really good to be able to donate as well. And we also want to stress, like, if it's possible to have like new or gently used, because even though it's really great, it's better than nothing to have something that was handed to you. It also just feels good to have something new, right? And then another thing is donating canned food or easily portable snacks. Because families are moving constantly throughout the day. They don't have fridges, they don't have microwaves. So food that they can easily eat without having to heat up or to cook is also something that's good. A lot of the times we have people who donate fresh fruit and fresh veggies, which is really great. But if they don't have a fridge, that fresh fruit veggies is going to last like 2 to 3 days before it gets bad, right? And so we want it to be sustainable too, because even though it was really great for people to have initiatives where they do things once a year, people are hungry all the time, right? Okay. Yeah.
If the shelters are getting, say, like, a lot of donations or like Big Goodwill, even, is there a program from them to go out to the streets?
It depends on the shelter. Yeah, it really depends on the shelter. Shelters mostly are focused on like what's going on there, but there are services in San Diego like Urban Street Angels, which their primary goal is to go to people on the streets, not people in shelters, and make sure that the people on the streets are getting access to healthcare, their access to food, their access to basic supplies. And so Urban Street Angels is a really good service. And like I said, I will provide you with my contact information so that if you do want a list of places that are not shelter based, that have people who will go out there and do it for you, I can provide you with that contact information.
I know that when you want to donate in certain areas, they see you, they'll pile up by your car and it's not safe.
Yeah, that you make a really great point. One time I had a bunch of kids who wanted to donate school supplies, right? And as soon as we were walking up to the shelter, you had a lot of people coming up to us like, hey, what do you got? What do you got? What do you got? So I don't recommend you going into like, when I say like, oh, I keep stuff in my car just in case, I'm not going to like huge areas where I'm by myself and then a lot of people can, come to me. I see one person or one child or something on the street and I can provide that really quickly to them. And so the services like Urban Street Angels, they have security guards. They have big teams of people who go out and they'll be able to help you disperse those materials.
I know they're partnering with UPAC. There's like they're hiring the homeless kids. There's a pizza store right next to Urban Street Angels.
Yeah.
Tommy's Pizza.
Oh yeah.
Program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there. I mean, luckily, what happens is you have a lot of community agents and just people in the community like yourselves that just want to help. And so services really rely on people as yourself to to be interested in this information, to be able to go out of your way and do something about it. Because as we know, there is a stigma around homeless, and when I help homeless and I help foster youth, and I noticed that there is a huge stigma in terms of homeless people versus foster youth, because when you're looking at foster children, you think like, oh, they can't help it. They got into this situation because something happened to their parents. And with homeless people, there's a stigma that, oh, well, they got themselves into this situation, right? And so there's a lot less support available for homeless youth out there because of that stigma. And so a lot of people don't want to donate. They don't want to spend their time, helping homeless students because they think in their minds that the parents or themselves got themselves into that situation. There might be adults who maybe they were very unresponsible with irresponsible with their money, but that's a very small percentage of homeless population we're talking about. A lot of, especially in San Diego, people who are experiencing homelessness is because they just don't have enough money to pay rent. And when we say enough money to pay rent, I mean, I live with my husband, and sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, if I didn't have my husband to help me pay rent, like I probably wouldn't be able to afford rent these days in San Diego. And so it's just the way it is right now with our economic. All right. I know that we're at the end, but I just really quickly want to share something with you guys. I run an emergency hotel stay program called Project Rest. We are able to provide families that have children with 5-night stay at a hotel or a motel. We pay for the stay. And so the reason why this isn't really important is because if a family gets kicked out that night, they go to a shelter. You guys, in San Diego, we have such a huge housing crisis that even shelters have long waiting lists that may last up to 2 weeks. Okay, and so if you get kicked out today and you have nowhere to go, you go to get on a shelter wait list, you still can't get in on a shelter. At least the hotel stay allows them a safe place to sleep where they can shut the door and lock it until they can get off the wait list. And so if you guys ever find yourselves in a situation where you have a family that's experiencing homelessness, please refer them to me and I can get them a hotel stay for up to 5 nights. Depending on where they're located, it can even be up to 15 nights. And we pay for that.
So the hotel stays, are they being more strict now because they said that a lot of girls are being raped?
So the hotels that we work with are vetted, and we go through a specific process to be able to get the family in a safe place. Unfortunately, there are other housing agencies that work with adult chronic homelessness, and so they operate on a different level than we do, but we go through a very vetted process to be able to get our families into the hotels and in a safe place because we work with children, right? And so we want to make sure that we get them into a safe space. But I know that is a concern, but the hotels that we work with have high security just specifically for that reason. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions?
None on the Zoom at this time. I've already prompted them. So anybody else in
Okay.
the room, if you have any other questions or comments?
I sent a question to you in chat.
Okay,
Okay, I can answer your
I
question.
just want to get the contact for the non-shelter building.
Yes. Like the contact information?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to leave my card over here. I'm going to give it to anyone who wants it. And if you can, do you have an email?
Yes.
Okay, if you can email me, I can send you a list
Okay.
of places that you can connect with. Oh, also my contact information is on the screen right here. That is my email. And that is my office phone number. So if you want to jot it down, and in that way, in case you ever want to do donations in the future, or you have questions about, you know, in the future, you might come across someone who is experiencing homelessness. You can give them my contact information, or you can reach out to me and have me contact them.
I'm just gonna go get my phone.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead. Yes.
Like when I go to Sprouts and I tell them, like, you know, what do you donate for children? Is that related to this, like, or is that like their own? Because I'm like, what am I donating to?
Yeah, it's so important to ask those questions. So it might not be. We already finished our recent fundraiser. We did it through Jersey Mike's and we did it through SDCCU. So we're closed now for like doing our yearly fundraiser. But that might be another organization. There's a lot of organizations that help people experiencing homelessness, Salvation Army, there's local charities. And so I would just make sure you ask specifically, like, where are these donations going to? Because if they're asking for donations, they should know that information.
Because it's like, oh, would you like to donate to kids? I'm like,
yeah.
Like,
yeah.
To like support the universe. Yes. I mean, like, what?
And a lot of the times they say a very quick thing like that is because they're trying to catch people. People don't want to sit there all day and, like, you know, listen to you talk about where this money is going to go. But if you ask the question, they'll have a response for you because they should know where those donations are going.
It's actually like when you swipe, you know, when you like buying girls.
Oh yeah. Yeah, ask the cashier, because whenever they do a fundraiser with an organization like that, everybody, staff at the grocery stores are supposed to, like, understand where that money is gonna go. Yeah, especially the managers on site.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing on the Zoom yet. The person who said that they posted, I don't see it in question. Maybe if you can speak, only one mic can be heard.
Oh,
you
okay.
Can ask with your mic. Oh, they sent it to you privately.
Please put your contact information in the Zoom, since we won't be able to pick a business card. Oh, okay. It's right there on the screen. Let me just exit out of the chat right there, and that's my contact information. You can reach me at my email and my phone number. I'll put this on the side actually so that I can see anything else that might be coming in. Elaine says, I just learned about a new nonprofit, License for Freedom. I think they help homeless people. Yes, that is an organization that helps homeless. And what is nice is that there are a lot of organizations that help families experiencing homelessness, but even so, I always say it's not enough, just because I do this every day, and there's so many homeless people who are working in homeless education, or people who are helping to work with homeless, they have such big caseloads of work. And they're doing it all day long, and there's just so many people.
So, how do you avoid burnout while doing that? And I'm a healthcare worker, so I know that burnout.
Yeah, the burnout is real. My last staff meeting, I broke out and I cried. And that's because sometimes you have really hard weeks, and sometimes they're good. And you know what I remind myself is, luckily when you work with, like, people who are in this field, like, you can talk to each other, you know, and kind of vent. But I try to remind myself, like, that we're doing good things, but it's really, really easy to focus on all the bad things or the things that you cannot do. But there's only so much that you can do. And so, you know, there was one week where I had a mom and two kids, and they were just so tired of living at the shelters, and they were, you know, tired of not having money for food. And one of the children was like, I just want to die, you know, and that's really hard to deal with, because you know there's only so much you can do in that situation to help. And in that same week, I met that mom with four kids under 2. She had 2 sets of twins. She was fleeing a domestic violence situation, and the guy had hired people to chase after her. And that's why she had to come from all the way from Georgia to San Diego, because this is the only place that she had a family, but then she couldn't contact her family member, and she was feeding her kids hot sauce packets, and then her kids got pneumonia and bronchitis, and one of them had to have brain surgery. And then they found out that they were also highly allergic to like they have very high allergies to like fish and nuts, which is like stuff, it's hard when you're staying at a shelter to be picky about the food that you're getting. And so she wasn't able to eat sometimes at the shelter, and it was just a lot, right? And so that's why it's important to like be knowledgeable about other services, because sometimes the shelter staff can't even do a lot, and you have to like reach out to other people to be like, hey, can you help in this? I was sneaking the milk. I was like bringing them food every single week just so that they can have food to eat. And so it's like hard not to deal with burnout, but also like you can only do as much as you can. And that's why it's really important for like other people to help as much as they can too. Yeah.
Another 3 comments.
Yes.
If you want to read those that you made.
Yeah.
One question, if you had anything to suggest for those online that are not in San Diego.
Thank you so much. I've learned a lot from the class. Thank you, Erica. I appreciate that. What was the online question?
I didn't see the online question, but Venerable was just wondering if you had anything to recommend to those that are not in San Diego.
Oh, yes. California. Yeah, that's actually a really great question. If you're not in California, what I would do is, okay, one, if you're not in California, and you are in a state in the United States, I have to, because by federal law, we connect with all the states, is if you're looking for someone like me in your area, I can connect you with a contact person in your area to be able to get you information for the services and the school networks in your area. And so I'm like the point person in San Diego County, but if you're like even outside of San Diego County, Orange County, Los Angeles, Sacramento, or Louisiana, or Texas, I can find you the correct person to get in contact with, so you can help kids who are in that area that are experiencing homelessness, and also figure out what kind of services there are. Also, a really great way is to Google and see what kind of community agencies you can volunteer at and help at. Yeah.
Is there a way to kind of help with the liaison? Like, say, like San Diego Unified has like 2,000 versus Ocean has 10. I mean, obviously that one's a big difference.
Yeah.
San Diego Unified has like 2 one liaison.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Are there like programs?
San Diego has a few more because they have such a huge workload. So I know that like San Diego Unified has like a team of 5 people instead of like 1 person designated. Yeah. So they do get funding, but one of the things that we're facing right now is during COVID, federal, they gave us a lot of money to be able to help kids who are experiencing homelessness, because a lot of kids got lost when we identified kids through school and then they weren't coming to school. It was really hard for us to figure out where these kids were. And so the government actually gave us a lot of money, but it was 3-year money. And that 3-year money expires September of 2024. And a lot of people who help homeless students are about to lose their jobs, including me, who are this grant funded until the next year, 2024. And so one of the biggest things that we're trying to get people to understand is like, we actually really do need this money to continue. And so that's why voting is very important. Make sure you guys vote, because your vote actually matters. And also just making people aware that this is such a big situation, because a lot of people don't know that there's 20,000 kids in San Diego that are experiencing homelessness.
Have we recovered from that shutdown in terms of education? And I'm gonna play the devil's advocate here, like, to argue for the money, and because I deal with this healthcare all the time.
Yeah.
Well, we need this. And well, no, because like you're back to normal, quote. Like, yeah. How do you just, like, obviously you need it, like, but they're like, well, how come it's okay before, and now it's never been okay, really? Yeah,
I mean, that's where we're still dealing with side effects of COVID. We're still dealing with like like there, you know, in 2020 to 2021, you guys saw that 16,000 number, and then like now it's 20,000. It's because it wasn't really 16,000. It was around 20,000, but we just didn't have the resources to identify the number of students that we have. So it's always been an ongoing issue, but it's easy to put data and be like, oh yeah, that's not what was happening, but it really was.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the questions. Thank you, Linda, for
Yeah.
today. There was one final comment that I just want to bring your eyes to from Elaine.
Okay.
And then I ask you if you can mute yourself so that I can switch.
And then stop. Can you help me with the unpin? I can't see here. What are you trying to do? Sorry, everyone. I was just resetting the pin settings for the spotlight. Thank you, everyone, for participating in today's event. Thank you for everyone here with us in San Diego. Thank you for our wonderful speaker for today, telling us all this information, Ms. Linda Lee Garibay. And we will close today with Venerable Miao Zhang. We'll be doing the dedication of merits.
So if everyone can join me for the dedication of merit by joining our poems. May kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity pervade all worlds. May we cherish and build affinities to benefit all beings. May Chan, Pure Land, and precepts inspire equality and patience. May our humility and gratitude give rise to great vows. So thank you again. Thank you, Linda, for sharing with us all the insightful information about students experiencing homelessness and how we can help. And I hope that for those of you who are not here locally, you can reach out to Linda for more information, for resources that she knows. And then for those of us here in person, like Linda is within reach, no problem. So thank you again. And we will have our further announcements soon, but not tonight. Okay, enjoy your summer, and I'll see everyone in fall. Amitofo. Thank you. Thank you, Linda.